affidavit the power to authorize the medical treatment and education of a child they claim to have a relationship with, whether the parent consents or even knows. Now, folks, you say, this doesn't pertain to me. I don't live in California. It does. Because as she's going to explain, California is a sanctuary state. Let's say your child's 15, 16, 14. It really doesn't matter because California is a sanctuary state. Let's say your 14-year-old daughter is grabbed by her, quote, boyfriend who's 25, gets her to California, and then claims she needs medical care. Whatever that might mean, related to, abortion, contraceptives, etc. Or someone grabs a child, takes them there, maybe an ex, but does he have to be an ex? Someone else grabs the child and takes them there to get them gender treatment, hormones, etc. You're about to hear how a parent could come to the school to pick their child up and they're not there. Someone has filled out the form and taken the child, and you don't know where the child is, and they're starting to change the child's name and information. It sounds like something out of a movie where sex traffickers do this, but it's the government of California, and it doesn't just impact California because they can get that child out of a state, bring it to California, and now the power of the state government of California is working against you to get your minor child back. This is a red alert for everybody. And we know that, of course, Gavin Newsom looks like he's going to be running for president. I guess this is what's on our horizon, folks. Nicole Pearson will join us tonight on this. We're also going to be joined tonight by Aaron Lavarco, our reporter on the ground in Israel. Breaking news: Netanyahu decides on full occupation of Gaza Strip. Israeli Defense Force activity in areas with hostages. So they may, I hate to say this, they may blow up buildings knowing they have lots of Hamas leaders in there, but also some of the Israeli Israeli hostages. They may have, they believe, to sacrifice some of the hostages to end this. And we got video, of course, of one of them digging his own grave. Then we're going to be joined tonight by Dr. Heidi Klesig, the anesthesiologist. She's back because we have more news now. Thankfully, RFK Jr. is getting involved. He's vowing today to do something about the organ harvesting. Isn't that what it really is? Taking the organs of people that are not dead, who can survive, who maybe can actually have a full recovery, and you're going to hear some more of those stories tonight. But apparently, organ harvesting is big business. She's going to join us tonight. And then we also have with us tonight Mark McCloskey. Remember him? Protecting his home with his wife against the Antifa, Black Lives Matter type thugs. Apparently he's able to pick his gun back up, his guns, but he's got some other reports for us tonight as well. Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, get out the word. There's no other show out there on the World Wide Web or broadcast outlets like this, and that's by design. There really isn't. And we hear it all the time. That's not my opinion. That's fact, because we hear from our viewers all the time that we cannot find another show like what you guys put out with Worldview Radio, Worldview Report, Brandon House Live. Can't find other shows like that. Well, that's by design, folks, because we're not trying to be like every other show. We're willing to go where others aren't. And of course, then we're bringing it through the lens of a Christian worldview. Of course, I had my church service last night, teaching through the book of Revelation, lesson 45, as I'm in the chapter 19 of the book of Revelation. So if you appreciate what we're doing, tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, get everybody over here tonight. About to have Nicole Pearson with breaking news that impacts every one of you, regardless of whether you live in California or not, because your child can be taken, grabbed, and taken there. And then good luck fighting the state of California to get your minor child back. Now, how do we make all this happen? Push it all out for free Well, one way is through our great sponsors. And as you know, one of our great sponsors is Gatatana. Okay, it is a phytoplankton that I drink every day. I've been drinking it about twice a day now, boosting my immune system. It gets right to the cellular level, to the mitochondria. So I can have a powerful immune system that can take on the free radicals, the cancer cells, all those things that are floating around in our bodies, all the toxins. So I take this each and every day. It's available at melissahousegpa.com. They also have a pet version. And actually, I found out the pet version is actually $20 cheaper. So we started ordering the pet version. I didn't realize that. My wife, she's so smart. She found that out. So this is exactly what we give Dolly now. Half a scoop in her food, not mine anymore. I'm giving her own, the pet version, which is $20 cheaper. So I take it every day. Dolly takes it every day. I think you should take it every day. 5 clinical trials. Remember the man that developed it, boosted his own immune system and fought off cancer? 11 biopsies came back benign. 11 biopsies came back benign. It was a terminal case, lived another 10 years, retired to Hawaii. So there you go. melissahousegpa.com. And by the way, yeah, I have one right here. Hang on. And then Bella Grace. Bella Grace, that is loaded with 3 powerful ingredients. Collagen, with the peptides cut short so your body can actually absorb it. Cat's claw, that's an anti-inflammatory. And astaxanthin, that crosses the brain-blood barrier, takes on those free radicals. melissahousebg.com for that lower third. melissahousebg.com. But they don't only have the elixir, they also have the skincare that Melissa loves. She loves their skincare. You can read about it there. The weight management, the Bella Trim, all natural plant-based. The sleep, the restorative sleep gummies. And they have a brand new product coming out the 1st of September. We'll be announcing. Melissa's already on it. It's something that she thought we should develop. We should develop this because of what's in it before we knew that Bella Grace was doing this. And then we found out, they've already done it. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. Well, my wife was already researching what's in this new Bella Grace product. She was already researching those ingredients, saying this is what people need, only to find out Bella Grace has got it coming out September 1st. So that's great. We'll tell you about that. But in the meantime, go there, if you will, melissahousebg.com. Get your Bella Grace. The Numi, Swish for Life. I was swishing about 4 or 5 times a day over the weekend, continuing to try to boost my immune system, detox my cells. Glutathione. Studies show helps remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. All those sponsors. Of course, don't forget about Worldview Talk. Worldview Talk. Get your satellite phone. Get your solar generator. Get your free Starlink. It's free. This is free with a very reasonable monthly plan. Starlink is free with a very reasonable monthly plan. All of it. Worldviewtalk.com or 1-866-738-3224. 1-866-738-3224. All right? There you go, my friends. Let's get to it. Joining me now is our reporter on the ground, Aaron Lavarco, with breaking news tonight. Aaron, thank you for joining us at this late hour there in Israel. What is the
pleasure,
Brennan?
Well, firstly, good to be with you. Secondly, the breaking news is that our government, our cabinet, have had a meeting, and basically, in short, they have made a decision. The decision's been made that Israel will be going in and occupying the Gaza Strip immediately.
Well, what does that mean when you say going in and occupying? What does that mean? You're just sitting in, what, 5,000, 10,000 troops? What does that mean?
Yeah. The minute details of that will be revealed in the coming days. But if I can go back to basically October the 7th, Benjamin Netanyahu had 3 clear goals. One was the elimination of Hamas. Number 2 was the return of our captives. And number 3, the driving out of basically the evil in the Gaza Strip. And basically what I'm seeing and understanding is that going into the Gaza Strip, I mean, we've basically already conquered about 75% as it is. But the minute details is we're going to be sending more troops. We're going to be going into areas that we have not been in before. And on that note, it's basically believed that we're going to be going into areas where the captives are being held. So there is a massive risk factor going to be involved in this. And we talked about this the other night. Will our troops, cut off the leg of the cancer to save the body? Meaning, to kill off the Hamas operatives and leaders, we may need to take out our captives.
In other words, you may have to bomb a building that has a bunch of Hamas leaders, but also your Israeli hostages.
Yeah. Now listen, let me bring it into context. What have we been seeing in the last few days, Brennan?
Been seeing a picture of a guy digging his own grave in a tunnel.
Yeah. And our president, not only our prime minister, but our president, our leaders are horrified. This is sending shockwaves through our whole country, Brannon. And it's inhumane. And then you've got the brother and the family, the mother of the poor man who was digging his grave. Can you imagine what she's going through? And of course, this puts there it is there. Look, he's talking. What I'm doing now is digging my own grave. He sees the handwriting on the wall because he looks at his body every day. He sees that it's decaying. He knows he can't go on much longer. They're not giving him any food. There was actually a picture. I think I sent it to you by email, Brannon. A picture of a Hamas terrorist handing food to that poor man, one of our sons, and his hand and his arm was nice and thick and healthy. So who's starving here, Brannon? Is it the people of Gaza or is it our captives? And so the narrative has been turned around. We cannot go on like this forever. So they've made a decision. Now, let me tell you that not everyone is in favor of this decision. There is a mass opposition, even from our military leaders, our top chief of staff. He and the higher echelon in the military, they are not for this, Brandon, because in the past, the first Lebanon war, the second Lebanon war, when we actually went inside and occupied Lebanon, South Lebanon, and in the past, when we have occupied areas of Gaza, the cost, not just the physical, not just the financial cost, but the cost on human lives, cost on our soldiers, the cost on the psychological weight on our nation, where it just goes on and on and on. So major factors, this decision. Personally, I am for the decision. I think we really, and here's the thing, Brendan, I hope we're not being seduced into this. I hope this is not a trap by Hamas. They are guerrilla soldiers, and I hope this isn't a trap. And we know that there is, to some degree, booby traps, explosive devices already set up. But if you and I know that, then no doubt our expert soldiers, our elite units know this, and this is what they're trained for. So there's a lot at stake. Get your seatbelts on, because these next few days, maybe weeks, are going to be, I think, massive in this war, one way or another.
Here
it's going to
is
be
a
massive.
video. I guess Israel, they're doing an ad campaign in New York, in Times Square. I think this is.
Yeah, good. We're losing the battle in the PR, and thank God we're doing it. And listeners, we need to pray. People, pray for these people, pray for our soldiers, and pray for the bigger picture that somehow the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, somehow gets glorified in this, and that this is a message to the Muslims that they're losing the war. We could have finished this off a long time ago, but for the captives. And remember what I just sent you, Brandon, about an hour ago. The Hamas leaders, listen to what the Hamas leaders are saying. One of the commanders in Hamas rocket force said, and I quote, "If there is one regret about the October 7th invasion, it is that we did not take 3,000 prisoners instead of 251.
Wow.
You see, they know the importance of taking our captives. They know its strategic value, and they got us. And I personally think we're going to need to look and reevaluate our decisions about what to do in the future if God forbid it should happen again.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, here's a recent clip by President Trump on Gaza. Here we go.
They see evidence of a genocide in Gaza?
I don't think it's that. Look, they're in a war. Some horrible things happened on October 7th, as you know. It was a horrible, horrible thing. One of the worst I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of bad things in some president in terms of wars and potential wars. I mean, if you look at the one that we just stopped, there are thousands of people being dead already at the border between Thailand and Cambodia. Thousands of people. And I mean, I've seen some bad things, but that October 7th with Hamas was really, really bad.
Aaron?
They see evidence of a genocide.
Yeah.
So President Trump basically saying, I don't think it's genocide what Israel's doing.
No, absolutely. Hey, he's got his men on the ground here right now. Steve Witkoff. Is it Steve Witkoff? Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what's the man's name? Mike Johnson,
the Speaker of the House. Mm-hmm.
They're here. Mike Huckabee, they went into Gaza Strip. Who was it that said the other day, Mike Huckabee is an honest-to-do, devout Christian. He would speak out against any inhumane strategies by Israel. If there was a genocide, he would speak out against it, and he's not doing that. Quite the opposite. So it's very clear to those that want to hear. Some people don't want to hear. They don't want to know the truth because they want to change the narrative, because they want to demonize Israel in this. And on that note, Brandon, I'm hearing reports, and this is a really stern report. So if there are any Jewish people listening, that a man, Hillel Neuer, I think it was, don't quote me on that, but some well-to-do Israeli or a man in the media who speaks on behalf of Israel, before October the 7th, Brandon, he spoke out and warned that something big is about to happen, something dark is going to befall Israel. He actually spoke out against it. I'm going to try and get more details on this.
Yeah, please do.
He is speaking out, Brandon, right now, saying that something bad is about to happen to world Jewry, meaning the Jews around the world, where we see protests in the guise of human rights, freedom of speech, but these same people, they are pro-Palestinian, they hate Israel, and that there's something very serious about to happen on the Jewish communities worldwide. I don't know any more than that, so we need to pray and be on guard against.
Now, is this These are some of the strikes that have come into Israel in the last few hours, correct?
That's right, Brandon. As I was waiting to come on, I got some updates. Now, fortunately, I'm not in those areas, although I do live in that area. I'm actually down at the Dead Sea. I'm at a hotel right now. I'm at the Dead Sea. I did some recording today, and I just sent it through to Logan.
So we're going to have a new tour by Aaron out of Israel on the Dead Sea, and we're just getting so many people thanking us that you're doing this. So that we'll get that for probably
That's
Friday.
Encouraging.
For Friday's broadcast, folks. We're trying to roll these out on Fridays. We get them to us, we get them ready and roll for Friday. But you guys are still getting missiles coming in nonstop.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well,
Absolutely.
keep us posted. Be safe. Keep us posted. Let us know as soon as you can how many troops you think they're rolling into Gaza to permanently take up military occupation in Gaza.
I sure will, Brandon. Yep.
All right.
Good.
Aaron Lavarco, lighttothenationsministry.com, lighttothenationsministry.com, brought to you by our foundation, folks. We make regular love offerings to him to give us these breaking news reports, bring us these tours out of Israel. We need your support to keep it going. So many of you are thanking us, saying you can never go to Israel. It's just not something in your budget, or your health doesn't allow it, your job doesn't allow it, and you just love what we're doing with Aaron. But, a workman's worthy of his hire, and we need to pay him for his time and efforts, and that's the right thing to do, but we have to have the budgets to do it on top of all of our other bills to push out free programming. So please consider going now. Can you do $500 tonight? $1,000, $2,000? Whatever you can do is greatly appreciated. Even $20 a month, $10 a month, folks. It all adds up. WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. Lots of breaking news here tonight, folks. We'll be right back after this short break. Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at WVWFoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. Joining me now is Nicole Pearson. You remember her, right? The mom, the attorney, the Californian who's staying and fighting, defending faith, family, freedom. Our website, Factlawtruthjusticecom. Hey, did you hear about the law that's going viral in California that I guess somebody can show up at school if this law passes and check your kid out? Okay, now I don't know what all the facts are. We want to get it right. And so I sent an email or a text, and Nicole said, hey, Nicole, are you involved in this? Do you know anything about it? Not only is she involved in it, she's been going viral testifying about it. So my instinct was right. If there's a problem, Nicole's probably involved trying to make it right. And indeed she is. Facts, law, truth, justice. You got to hear this, folks, because this is going viral, but we want to get the facts right. Nicole, welcome back to Brandon House Live. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys. I missed you. Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you back. All right, Nicole, this story's going viral. Tell our audience about it. Some of them maybe know about it, but a lot probably don't.
Well, I think that everybody in the country needs to be paying attention to this bill because California is a sanctuary state. So before anybody switches off to do something else because they don't live in California, you need to actually do the opposite, stop what you're doing and hit the record button, because Assembly Bill 495 puts every single child in this country at risk. And I can lay it all out for you.
Please.
But essentially, okay, great. So we'll just start from the premise that California is a sanctuary state. So Gavin Newsom has already declared war on your children, regardless of where they live, and on the U.S. Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. He signed several bills into law which state that if a child is brought here to receive gender-affirming health care or reproductive and sexual health care, then the state and law enforcement and the courts will not pay attention to, they will not comply with the lawful orders, subpoenas, warrants, child custody orders of other states. So if your child is brought here by your ex or their abusive adult, significant other to receive quote unquote sexual reproductive health care or gender affirming care, California will not work with law enforcement and with the courts of other states to extradite the child and to hold that adult abuser accountable. So everybody needs to know that if their child is brought here, they're at risk if Assembly Bill 495 is signed into law. So number one. And number two, AB 495 is a bill that's been brought. It's been disguised or packaged as a bill to help children of undocumented immigrants in the event their parents are basically ripped from their homes in the middle of the night and these parents don't have a plan in place. Assemblywoman Celeste Rodriguez has said that we need to make available this one-page form that is downloadable for free and printable from the internet that says that any person, non-relative extended family member, that's a teacher, a mentor, a medical professional, a friend, a neighbor, I think I already said that, and a teacher can sign this affidavit and unenroll and enroll your child in any school of their choosing and authorize all medical care that school provides. It is not limited to the children of undocumented immigrants. It applies to every vulnerable child in the state, and as I just explained, to every vulnerable child in the country.
So does that mean, okay, so how does this work then? Someone shows up at the school, if this becomes law, someone shows up at the school, anybody can show up at the school and check your kid out of school and take your kid?
Right. So what's happening is there's the whole preamble talking about ICE and the ruthless, immigration deportation raids of Donald Trump. If you saw the bill, the committee hearing where I testified, questions, including myself, and they instead went on like a 10-minute diatribe about Donald Trump putting kids in cages, and that if it weren't for Donald Trump, then we wouldn't need to have this bill. I think I'm frozen. Am I still here, or am I good to go?
You're frozen, but we're hearing you.
I'm frozen?
But now you're back.
Okay. So basically, this bill has been written in a way that expands a current existing caretaker's authorization affidavit. So this already exists in the law, but it's used in dependency and probate proceedings. So when your child is removed from your home because you've been incarcerated, you're on drugs, or if you have passed away and probate proceedings have been initiated, a lot of times what will happen is this happens, unexpectedly, and there's this affidavit that the parents have filled out because they don't have access to the courts or whatever the case may be. They don't have a trust, but they wanted to plan. And so with their signature, their notarized signature, they can say that, for example, godparents who aren't necessarily blood related to the child, but who know the child, who know the family, they can take over these school educational decisions and medical decisions in the event that the parent is not available. However, with the existing affidavit, again, it's in connection with probate or dependency proceedings, and it doesn't include what this new term that Celeste Rodriguez has co-opted from foster care. This non-relative extended family member is now an individual who's obviously not related to the child, who includes a teacher, a mentor, a medical professional, a neighbor, a family friend, can now use this, take this into the school, unenroll them, take them and authorize to the nurse's office, authorize all medical care, which if you're watching what's happening in California, that includes therapies, drugs, all sorts of things that through the school your child can now receive. And if they sign it under penalty of perjury, then can take the same affidavit to any medical provider in the state and get any type of care for your child. On the form, it says there is no duty to conduct any inquiry, investigation. Anybody who relies on this affidavit in good faith will not be subjected to civil, criminal, or professional penalties. It says no parent signature is required. It is a dangerous bill that will be abused by traffickers, kidnappers, and child abusers. Certainly in the state and across the country.
Oh my. I mean, you almost think this is too crazy to be true, right? You know the old saying, if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. If it's too crazy, it's probably not true. I mean,
it's too crazy unless you live in California. Then it's like, oh, this is a regular legislative session.
Yes, and here's Nicole Pearson. Here she is testifying. Listen to a little bit of this. Here we go.
and fighting human trafficking. I am also desperate to help children affected by ICE raids, but AB 495 is not it. We all know this because in 2021, the federal government faced a swell of unaccompanied minors at the border and was desperate to place them quickly. What did they do? They reduced vetting procedures, and as a result, the Department of Homeland Security has lost track of over now 600,000 unaccompanied minors. Despite this, California wants to do something similar, but even worse. With just one from the internet, California wants to let someone that is not related to your child remove her from school, enroll her in any other school in the state, authorize any medical treatment of her, including mental health services and drugs, without the parent's notice and knowledge or consent. This is not fear-mongering. I'm not being hyperbolic. It's stated right here in the Caretakers Affidavit that I printed for you, which I pulled directly from the bill. Line 6 allows this transfer of parental rights without even having to speak to the parent. The author claims AB 495 is about giving immigrant families the agency to choose the safety plan that works, that preserves family unity. Where is the parental designation? Their signature at the bottom here is not required. She's co-opting a term non-relative family member from the foster care and dependency probate systems, but without any of the procedural guardrails. No background checks, no interviews, no home visits, no fingerprinting, parental involvement, or civil, criminal, or professional liability if the child is harmed. Just 100% blanket protection for any adult seeking to abuse any vulnerable child, because this does not limit it to immigrant children. This applies to every single child in the state. Our children deserve to be protected through proper legal channels that currently exist, that have safeguards, and not just shortcuts that enable exploitation. We appreciate the author's intentions, but these unintended consequences are terrifying and they're unavoidable.
Wow. So let's role play how this could work. Let's say your child has been talking to a school counselor, and they have now been led, because of all the propaganda, to think there's somehow a boy trapped in a girl's body.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And they tell the school counselor, my parents aren't buying it. They're not going along with it. They're saying, no, you're being lied to, you're being brainwashed. And maybe the parents are coming at it from, a religious perspective, or just maybe a common sense perspective, which actually those two can be the same, right? But what that means is then some individual that is tied to the school counselor tells somebody, that individual, maybe with a medical group or some clinic that deals with this, child psychiatrist group, whatever, decides to make this their issue. And they show up at the school and say, we're taking the child to go and have them treated, whether it's, hormone shots or whatever it might be. Boom, this is how and all of a sudden you find out when you go pick your kid up, he's not here, someone's taking your child. All right, this way out?
Yes. That's it. Yes. I mean, the other scenario that is going to happen, and it's very easy to look up and again, confirm, I'm not being hyperbolic. If you look at interviews of pedophiles and child predators, the number one thing that they look for is a strong male figure in the child's family. Okay. And we've talked about this, Brandon, my work in anti-human trafficking. We've talked about human trafficking and then specifically child sex trafficking, but let's just talk generic terms and child abusers. They look for that. The other thing they look for is if the child has lots of friends, because if the child has lots of friends or they're very outgoing, they're going to tell when something is exciting, whether they understand it's bad or good. But the other thing they look for is some sort of vulnerability, a need that the family has. So we're not, again, talking about undocumented immigrants. We're talking the dad that has 3 children whose wife passed away and has to work multiple jobs and can't pick up the kids. And so he relies upon his neighbor. He relies upon his family friend, or the child is doing an after school program and now all of a sudden has a mentor. The reason why I am picking these terms it's because these terms are stated in the bill, and that's what is included but not limited to non-relative extended family member that Celeste Rodriguez says can access and use this affidavit. So that's another example. And you look at the interviews of these pedophiles and they'll say, I would go to the mom, the single mom who was working multiple pickup, and I would say, the kids can come over. I'm a neighbor. The kids can come over to my house. And it wouldn't happen right away. It would happen slowly but surely. But again, I think it's around 86%. I have to look at the current 2025 statistic, but it's upwards of 86% of child abuse occurs or is perpetrated by someone the child knows. So your example is exactly correct. It's going to be abused by teachers. It's going to be abused by medical professionals. No, it's not the child's medical provider. But who's pediatrician, whatever, take custody of them anyways. But it's a medical professional. Why? It's the same term that we've been sounding the alarm on all these other bills that they've been trying to ram through the legislature. So if you look at what's been happening in California, we have children who can now leave their homes thanks to AB 665, Scott Wiener and Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo's bill that allows them to run away from home for whatever reason into a residential shelter where they will encounter adults who can now, with this, unenroll them from school, get them psychiatric, drugs, any kind of treatment, whether it's, gender hormone therapy, puberty blockers, whatever it is. Thanks to Assembly Bill 223, which we talked about last year, Brandon. It's not a sexy bill. It was not excited. Nobody wanted to listen to me about it. It passed. Christopher Ward's bill passed that says any adult can take any child and confidentially, so no due process, you don't have to notify anybody, confidentially change their name, gender, sex identifier. And not to be undone by his satanic, democratic, demonic, whatever you want to call it, counterpart, Rick Zabur out of LA has said that bill, that confidential process that passed last year, we're going to expedite it. So now the confidential proceedings to change children's names, genders, and sex identifiers with an adult who has this affidavit, who found your child in an AB 665 residential shelter, will now happen in under less than 6 weeks if AB 1084 passes, which is going through the legislature this year. You have to look at everything in context. And that's my job. And that's what I've been doing the last however many years this has been. I've seen these bootstrapping incremental bills, which have essentially tried to and are successfully removing your children from your homes, legally giving them over to strangers who can virtually erase them from the face of the planet.
Kidnapping, sex trafficking are not, these are legitimate terms. And you're shaking your head, yes. Sex trafficking, this can be used for sex trafficking, kidnapping, etc. And if you're changing their name and everything else, does the parent who shows up at school to pick their child up and now finds their kid's gone, are they going to be informed as to where their child even is?
No, because remember when AB 665 passed, and that was one of our biggest complaints, is that there was no requirement that they inform the parent. So if the child runs away, then there's no requirement. They have to make some sort of a good faith attempt. There's no process. There are no proceedings to ensure that the parent is notified or involved. And remember, you guys, every mature 12-year-old in the state of California can seal their medical records, sexual, reproductive, mental health, substance abuse. They can seal those medical records. So even if you find out where your child is and they're receiving this treatment and the child has decided to seal their records and to keep them confidential, your 12-year-old, they can't tell you even if you find out where your child is.
But you're telling me that a parent could show up at their school if this passes, they pick their child up, their child's gone, and they could go days or weeks fighting the system to even know what it is?
Right. Well, that's the problem with this Caretakers Affidavit. And I'll just call it the Caretakers Affidavit for just short purposes, is that these are typically used. They're typically, number one, I've never seen an affidavit that has not been notarized. These are used, the original form, not with the non-relative extended family member, not with that new terminology. These are used currently in foster care proceedings and probate proceedings when you are not able to care for your child, either because you're deceased or you're on drugs, you're incarcerated, you're incapacitated. These do exist, but typically a parent plans for this. And they get this notarized. They fill it out typically with the person who will be the caretaker. They fill it out together, and then the parent.
All right, I think we just lost Nicole, but we're going to get her back on and keep covering this. But in the meantime, look at this. Here's what I need you to do, folks. Go over here to Factlawtruthjusticecom. Factlawtruthjusticecom. And what she was trying to say there, by the way, when we lost her, is you get that form, you sign it, you don't have to have it notarized, there's no warning. I mean, this thing is rigged. But go to Factlawtruthjusticecom. When you get there, go to the bottom of the page. You see all these Rumble, this is, I guess, Rumble, Instagram, Telegram, Twitter, Substack. Click the icon for Substack, and it's going to bring up the articles. Look at this. And you should share these all over the place. Here it is. She's been on this for a while. Here's the headline. California's plan to hand vulnerable children to traffickers plus gender radicals. Brand new article, August 1st. Bill grants to any unrelated adult who fills out a caretaker's authorization affidavit, which is what she was showing when we lost her, the power to authorize the medical treatment and education of a child they claim to have a relationship with, whether the parent consents or even knows. Okay? AB 495 codifies a similar open investigation to traffickers and gives unprecedented power to gender activists in California's schools and child protection systems. Remember, California is a sanctuary state. They grab your kid, your minor child out of the state you're living in now, get them to California. You're going to have to fight to get that child back. And that's even if you can find the child. In other words, almost any conceivable claim to a familiar relationship the child can make. Okay? A child living with an unrelated adult faces a higher risk of abuse. The risk of death from injury may be nearly 50 times that of a child living with a biological parent. Despite this, AB 495 has zero guardrails in place. No background checks, no fingerprinting, no ID, no home visits, filing requirements, hearings, check-ins, or proof of parental involvement whatsoever. No requirement that the person receiving an affidavit makes any further inquiry or investigation. No liability for any party relying upon the affidavit, civil, criminal, or professional. Schools will become one-stop shops for removing children from their homes and subjecting them to cruel medical abuses. Combined with other recent laws granting the state emergency jurisdiction over minors seeking, quote, gender-affirming, end quote, and, quote, sexual and reproductive, end quote, health care, AB 495 ensures the child can receive authorized procedures from abortions to counseling to chemical and surgical castration, sterilization, and mutilation of healthy sex organs, all without the knowledge or consent of the child's parents. But moving out of California is not the answer. In 2022, California passed Law SB 107, which grants the state emergency jurisdiction over children, quote, unable to obtain gender-affirming health care or gender-affirming mental health care, end quote. In the last 3 years, 14 other states and the District of Columbia passed similar provisions. Such a law ruptures the long-established agreement between states to return runaways and kidnapping victims to their parents. If the child is in state sexual, reproductive, or gender-affirming care, he or she will not be returned to the parent with legal custody or abide by the laws or orders of another state. So, legal kidnapping. AB 495's Caretaker Affidavit is a license to steal children, drug and abuse them, not a safeguard of parental consent. Given the dangerous framework California has already installed to capture and remove our children from our homes, the existing legal procedures currently in place to address unaccompanied children. And my personal offer to help a safer, effective bill that has gone unanswered must be with AB 45 must be withdrawn. So she's tried to offer up provisions here. They don't want it because what's really going on here is what you see. This is what they want. So I would urge you to go now to factlawtruthjustice.com. Factlawtruthjustice.com. That's the website. Scroll down the page. Click Substack. The icon. There's the article. August 1st. Share it far and wide. We get this posted online. Share it far and wide. This is very serious, as you can obviously tell. My third book was on 1995. Had a whole chapter on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which said that children, minor children, would be treated as adults Now we've got children making decisions, minor children saying, I want this, I want that, I want this kind of trans procedure. I think I'm a girl trapped in a boy's body, or vice versa, the child may say. Someone gets them to California and they're getting what they want. Parent can say anything. In other words, the child has the right to make decisions that normally children don't have the right to make that are minors. This is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. We're one of the few nations that has not ratified that. California is basically practicing it, as well are other states. This is a huge risk. It seems to me that California, in many ways, has already seceded from the Union. They're not abiding by the Constitution of the United States in so many regards. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Just remember that, folks. If California wants to act outside of the rule of law in our country and the Constitutional Republic, then maybe it's time for them to go. Maybe all of these leftists that want to do this, well, you guys can go, but you're not taking our children. I bring that up to simply say, isn't it interesting that the left can get away with this when they want to do everything that's antithetical to God and country and our republic? But when parents say, I want to practice my Christian faith, my Christian worldview, I want to raise up my children in the nourishment and admonition of the Lord, and all of a sudden they're radicals. When parents want freedom of speech, freedom of religion, when American citizens, parents or not, want freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms, the Second Amendment, we're called radicals. When we say we don't want to be a part of a federal government anymore that's going to trample our rights, we're not allowed to say that. But California can do whatever they want. These liberal states can do whatever they want. And, of course, most lawmakers and members of the media go right along with it. When the reality is we're the ones that are under the desire of a rule of law known as the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. But in many regards, hasn't California already seceded from the Union? Just a question. But in the meantime, keep a close watch on your kids, your grandkids, who they're with, who they're around. And just know that your minor child could be taken by these people to California. And good luck getting them back. And even finding them. And fighting the resources of the state of California. This is very serious. And I'm thankful for Nicole Pearson tonight. We'll be right back after this break.
Nature has a rhythm, a quiet strength, a way of restoring, protecting, and renewing us. Wellness isn't just about how you feel today. It's the quiet choices you make for tomorrow. At myvitamin.com/worldview, we've made daily self-care simple. Quality vitamins, daily supplements, and targeted nutrition. myvitamin.com/worldview makes it easy. Pure ingredients thoughtfully combined, tailored for your body. Formulated by a doctor who has over 25 years of medical practice experience and is a certified functional medicine provider. Visit myvitamin.com/worldview today and take the next step towards strength, balance, and resilience. Discover the wide range of med packs made for you and your loved ones. What you nurture today becomes the strength you walk in tomorrow.
Joining me now is anesthesiologist Dr. Heidi Klesig. Doctor, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us. I want you to know that the interview we did last week with you and Tamara Scott, which is how I met you. Tamara has you on regularly, one of our broadcasters at noon Central, 1 Eastern at worldviewtube.com. That interview, we did a clip. It has now received over 2 million views in just a few days.
Well, Brandon, thanks so much for having me back. I think this is a topic that it's long overdue for people to be scrutinizing what's been going on in organ donation and transplant. So I'm glad you're getting the word out.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that, though, that disturbed me was how there was a percentage of people, I don't know what percentage, but a percentage of people attacking you because you were being truthful and honest and transparent about when you realized what was going on, and you were shocked the first day you walked in and you had to try to process this and move forward. I was shocked at the number of people that, instead of thanking you, were attacking you. So I'm assuming you must have seen this on your own as you go out there and speak about this.
You know, honestly, most of the people that I speak to, they say to me, you know, I always sort of had a feeling there was something wrong with that, but I could never put my finger on it. You know, once in a while, I do get sort of an angry response, but honestly, you know, I take that as a win. I mean, I think getting angry is the proper response. And when people get angry, they often lash out. But honestly, I was angry when I first realized that I had been deceived, that I had bought into a system that was, you know, against my conscience. So I think people who get angry, I think they're showing the proper response, and I'm sure those people will think about it later.
Yeah, well, I just think they should be thanking you for being humble and transparent and coming forward, because, you know, your book and your interviews are reaching, literally, now we know for a fact on our end, millions of people. Now, we do have some good news today. We're being told in one alert, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has announced his vow to ban organ harvesting from patients who show any signs of life. So this is good news today.
Yes, that's very good news. That's what everybody, of course, should want. We should want the people who are being so selfless as to donate for others. We should want them to be biologically dead at the time of their donation. It's hard to imagine having any problem with that.
Yeah, isn't it, though? Now, I understand that when you are on the organ donor list, this is a binding contract that can stop your family from intervening. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, that is correct. And it's really a shame, because when people are asked to become an organ donor, they're never given any type of informed consent process. They're just told, here, you know, put this sticker on your driver's license. But once you have registered as an organ donor, that is considered a legally binding decision. And in fact, people have had family members saying, you know, I'm sorry, our son, I know he's a registered organ donor, but he told us he had changed his mind and he just didn't have time to change the designation on his license. Sorry, in a case in Ohio, the Organ Procurement Organization took that case to court and won the right to take organs over the objections of that man's family, which was devastating, of course, to them. And right now in Arkansas, there's a law that had just been passed. There was a representative down in Arkansas who was sitting at the bedside of his elderly father who was passing away. And the decision had been made, let's withdraw care on grandpa and let him pass into eternity. But the whole situation was put on hold because the hospital said, we can't just do that. We have to notify organ procurement because grandpa was a registered organ donor. Well, this representative said he was confronted with his weeping mother, his weeping sister, and it threw the family into a real loop of distress. So he introduced a bill in the Arkansas State House, and then it was also passed in the Arkansas State Senate. The state senator said that they had worked with the organ procurement people on adding a couple of amendments to have everybody satisfied. And that law was scheduled to go into effect this week in Arkansas. So if the law had continued, family in Arkansas would have had the right to stop an organ procurement, even if their family member had been a registered organ donor. But the Organ Procurement Agency has now challenged in federal court to stop this law being passed by the representatives of the people of Arkansas. And that was supposed to go before a district judge for review this afternoon, and I have not yet heard how that turned out.
Well, let's keep an eye on that one. Let's go to another story that you sent me. Stephen Greer, MD, anti-transhumanist. That real Donald Trump just did something very important with HHS via Secretary Kennedy. This is a surprise announcement. I have not seen RFK discuss it before. It was not on the agenda. Tell me about this, please.
Well, RFK Jr. has been very responsive to a review, an independent review that was done by the Health Resources and Services Administration, HSRA. There was the index case that I think we talked about last time of TJ Hoover, who had been declared brain dead, but was thrashing and moving around and crying on the table on the way to become an organ donor. And thankfully that case was called off, and Mr. Hoover was able to recover and even dance at his sister's wedding a year or so later. But when the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network was asked to review that case, they basically closed the folder and said nothing to see here. So HRSA did their own independent examination. They looked at 351 cases where organ donation was authorized but not completed. And they found shocking numbers. They found 103 cases, 29.3%, showing concerning features. They said there were 73 patients, 21%, with neurological signs incompatible with organ donation. And they said there were 28 patients, which was 8%, who may not have been deceased at the time organ procurement was started. So Secretary Kennedy oversees all that, and he's going to continue the investigation along with the House Energy and Commerce Committee, who met about this issue on Tuesday, July 22nd of this year. They're going to be meeting again in September to continue the inquiry.
Wow, excellent. Tell me this story here. Brain death survivor Jennifer Hammond. Can you tell me this story that you tweeted about on July 23rd? It's pretty inspirational.
Sure. Yeah, Jennifer Haman is a brain death survivor. On our website, respectforhumanlife.com. We have a whole page of these, but I was able to speak with Jenny personally on the telephone. She was a young woman back in the late 1980s. She has a seizure disorder. And unfortunately, a doctor prescribed for her an antibiotic that was incompatible with her seizure medication, throwing her into intractable seizures. Because of that, she was on a ventilator in an ICU and was declared brain dead. Now, inwardly, Jenny was completely aware of what was going on around her. She simply could not move or sign to let anybody know. And so she told me she was lying there in the ICU on a ventilator, and she heard footsteps, tromping in, and she heard her doctor's voice saying, this is a sad case, a young woman with 2 small children at home, and other than her dead brain, she is an excellent specimen. So many people could be helped by her organs, but her husband is being completely unreasonable and won't make her a donor. And there's nothing Jenny could do but lay there and listen to that. She said the nursing staff, too, some of them treated her as less than human. She remembers one nurse saying, "Would you come over here and help me turn this thing?" But on the bright side, there was also an excellent nurse. And Jenny really attributes her recovery to this wonderful nurse who never gave up on her. She would say to her, "Jenny, I know you're in there. Come on, you need to try to take a breath. You can do it." And Jenny said to me, it felt as though the connections in her body were somehow lost. She couldn't really find the connections on how to breathe again, she thought. But as the nurse encouraged her, she remembered suddenly, there it is. And she took a long, deep breath, which was the beginning of her recovery. And Jenny not only got out of ICU, off the ventilator, but she went on to become a nurse herself so as to be able to help other patients in her situation.
Went on to become a nurse herself. Wow. Well, you have so many stories like this. I mean, I can't imagine being basically trapped in your own body. You can hear everything that's going on around you, and they're talking about killing you, talking about you like, help me turn this thing. I can't even imagine being in a situation like that. That's the stuff that horror movies are made of in part, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't remember. Did we talk about Zach Dunlap last time? And he had a similar situation. Zach Dunlap was a young man who was in a four-wheel ATV.
Yes, and his
accident.
cousin used a knife against his foot, right, to make
right.
him jerk.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
That's
When you posted about this, the New York Times, I guess JAMA, are they trying to redefine what it means to be dead so they can harvest more organs?
Well, take a look at those two headlines, right? One, the one on the left is from 1968, and the one on the right is from just the other week. And both of these are saying we should redefine more people as being dead already because we need them for organ donors. And I found that fascinating that the three doctors who wrote the op-ed in the New York Times not too long ago, they cited the original 1968 Harvard ad hoc committee as saying this is something we need to do, not because these people are actually dead, but as a utilitarian way of providing more organs. So I thought that was a nice juxtaposition to show really it's been a redefinition of death from the very beginning. These people who we are making organ donors today are in no way dead.
I don't want to put you on the spot or get you in trouble because I don't know what your employment situation is. So if you need to pass on this question, go right ahead. But did you ever think that the medical profession would become big organizations and these big, massive hospitals, corporations, that this would all become a system that's so evil and really antithetical to human rights, the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, the American value system? Did you ever think you'd see America's hospital system, medical system become, in some ways, very similar to the history we saw going in Germany, where you had death centers, murdering disabled children, murdering the seniors, and really laid the foundation for the technology, if you will, that was the foundation for the Holocaust? Did you ever think you would see this in America?
I don't think that the hospital system is really any different than the legal system, than the educational system, than any other system. I think generally, as a people, we have lost our reverence for human life. We have lost our respect for human life. And doctors and nurses are part of that same societal trend.
So would you be nervous to find yourself in a hospital as a patient? What kind of precautions would you take? Would you be sure you had a family advocate that was there on your behalf? What would you do as a doctor, knowing now what you know?
Sure. I think it's important, especially right now when these facts are coming to light. I think that it's important not to participate in this unethical system currently. So I do recommend that whereas living donation, in which both the donor and the recipient remain alive after the procedure, which is a wonderful thing, I don't think we should participate in these more ethically questionable types of donations, such as donation after so-called brain death. Brain death is not death. It's a social construct. It's a legal fiction. These people are neurologically injured, and their prognosis may be death. But if you take someone with a prognosis of death and hasten that along, that's called euthanasia. That's not an ethical thing to do. And the way doctors are taking donors who have had 2 to 5 minutes of pulselessness and beginning to harvest organs, those people are in no way dead. Everybody knows, and it's well documented, people are routinely resuscitated after 2 to 5 minutes of pulselessness. And if you could still be resuscitated, you are not dead. So again, these people are not dead. So I recommend that you should tell your doctor, please put in my medical record that I'm not a registered organ donor. If you are a donor currently, you should have it removed from your driver's license and the National Donor Registry. You should put in your healthcare power of attorney that you are not an organ donor and that when you are in the hospital, you want to be treated. It's very important to have family members available with this same information to watch out for you in case you're not able to communicate for yourself. So yes, you should have family, a healthcare surrogate, or a patient advocate there in your court to be sure that your wishes are complied with.
You used a key word there, was in my mind to ask you about. You've already invoked the word euthanasia.
Mhm.
There seems to be a real rise in the talk of euthanasia and ways for people to euthanize themselves. These death pods, even commercials we have from the United Nations from several years ago, older people saying, I've lived a good life. I've lived a good life. And basically saying people should be, I guess, offing themselves at some point because they're just no longer, they're a drain on society, on resources, etc. This is all so wrong. But whether it's the death pods, the legislation in states in America, Canada, people being encouraged to commit suicide, doctor-assisted suicide, which they want to call, dying with dignity. They give it all kinds of nice names. It's murder. People who are depressed, who have any kind of difficulty in their life, well, maybe you should just off yourself. How much do you think this push for euthanasia is tied to money and organ harvesting? It has to be not just a person being paid to have you get in the pod and kill yourself, the death pods they're creating, but there's got to be a whole money train there. Is organ harvesting a part of this push for active euthanasia?
Well, in countries where euthanasia is legal, such as in Canada or in the Netherlands, yes, they do take organs as part of that process. And to me, it's hard for me to think of something more damaging to a human being than to tell them, your life is worthless, but your organs are valuable. So why don't you become an organ donor and actually be killed via organ harvesting? I think that's a very damaging thing to tell a person who's already questioning their value and their humanity.
In closing, tell me about this story. You have so many of them. Three-week-old Harrison Elmer. Tell me about Harrison.
He was a little boy who had meningitis, and his family was told, his brain is gone, and so they loved their little boy, and they decided they didn't want him to suffer, and so they thought they would remove him from the ventilator in a dignified way and let him die in their arms. But lo and behold, when the ventilator was removed, little Harrison breathed. And he went on to get better, and he went on to grow up, and his mom said that he was meeting his milestones just like any other little boy, which points up the fact that, doctors are not omniscient. They make the best call they can based on their training and their experience, but they don't always know when someone is irreversibly comatose. And this little boy and the other survivors on our website prove that point.
Anything else on your radar that you should alert our audience to that I'm not asking you about?
I always tell people, don't wait until it's your time of crisis to think about these things. Please take a look at my information now. If you find what I'm saying upsetting, take a look at my website and see what you think.
What's the website?
Evaluate the information. It's www.respectforhumanlife.com. And again, when you're going through a time of crisis, when you're looking at a little child on a ventilator and you haven't slept and you haven't eaten, that's not the time to make these decisions. So please, even though we don't like thinking about death, take the time and look at the website, the videos, the information I have, and make the conclusion that fits with your conscience.
Yeah, indeed. Respectforhumanlife.com. So good news today. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is on this one. So we're thankful for that, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Keep us posted, will you, Doctor?
Thank you. I will.
Look forward to having you back. Check out our website in the meantime, folks. A lot of information there, as you can see. Types of organ donation. How much is a human body worth? How do I get off the donor list? So much there. Respectforhumanlife.com. And remember, she's got a book. There it is. The Brain Death Fallacy. Dr. Heidi Klesig. You can get it at Amazon or right there on the website, respectforhumanlife.com. We'll take you a link to it. Thanks again to Tamara Scott for introducing us to the doctor. Tamara has been having her on for quite some time on her broadcast, which airs right here on World YouTube, noon Central, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard each and every day, Monday through Friday. So thank you to Tamara Scott and thank you to Dr. Heidi Klesig. Again, the little clip we put out last week, it's done about 2 million or over 2 million now, right, Logan? Over 2 million now in just a few days. So I think shows the great hunger on this topic by so many people. Many people in the feedback saying they're rushing to get off the donor registration list. I don't blame them. I'm not on it, haven't been on it because my gut told me this seems like a good way to harvest my organs. And my gut was right. So trust your gut. Or for us as Christians, it might be trust that discernment, that Holy Spirit inclination, right? Check it out. Brain Death, The Brain Death Fallacy. Get the book by Dr. Heidi and check out our website. Share it around. respectforhumanlife.com. We'll be right back after this break.
True beauty isn't applied. It's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.
Joining me now is Mark McCloskey. You remember Mark, right? And his wife? He spoke at our Ozarks Worldview Weekend a couple years ago, brought the house down, standing ovation. And he's, of course, the one that was waving his gun out there in front of his house, protecting his home, practicing, and using his Second Amendment right, as well as his wife. She had a little pistol. Remember that? And they were attacked by the media, attacked by the court system. Remember, the people were, I guess they broke down the gate coming into a gated community, coming after his house. He says they were threatening him, his house, his pets. He stood his ground. And the whole media and the court system went after him. And he finally had to be pardoned by the governor of Missouri. Well, he's making news again. He got his gun back. His wife still needs that pistol. He joins us now to give us an update. Mark, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
For having me. Gosh, you got a beautiful set there, Brandon.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We work hard at it. Some people say, is that all that a green screen? Like, no, this is all very real. Go to a wide shot, Logan. Show him all that. Yeah, that's all legit.
Yeah.
Go to the one up top, Logan. Can you guys look? Can you take the lower third down? Is my dog in this? Is she on there? She's not in there. We got to move her bed over so she gets in the shot. Dolly's asleep on the pet bed right now. But yeah, no. People ask us, is that a green screen? We're like, no, trust me, it's not. As much as we've spent to make it nice, it's not a green screen. But we figured, Mark, like you, if it's worth doing right. And
Absolutely.
And I know you got high standards because I've seen some great articles, by the way, on your house and how you guys have remodeled that historic home of yours. Pretty amazing.
That's a pretty good reason not to want to have a bunch of lunatics from the left burn it down.
That's so true. So true. All right. So tell me, I reported on it in my Worldview Report newscast tonight. You got your gun back. Is that an AR-15? What was that?
It's an AR-15. It's one of my oldest friends. I bought that gun many, many years ago. It's an A2 model. It's a collector's item. I'm glad I pulled that one out that day because I've got an old Vietnam era one too that I would have been more upset if they'd taken. But yeah, there's a video of me collecting it from the cops on Friday morning.
What did they say? What did the police say to you when you showed up to collect it? Did any of them have a comment?
Well, no, it's actually kind of a fun story because, after 1,847 days, 3 lawsuits and 2 trips to the Court of Appeals, I finally got the court to order that they return the gun. And the order says that it should be returned and delivered to Mark McCloskey instanter, meaning rights taken now, right? And so I took the order down to the police headquarters. I showed it to the lady behind the glass, and she said, well, we don't have any property here. You got to go down to the property department on 59th Street. So I go down there. There is no way to get into that building. Not even a mark on it that says St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. So I call the number. Some guy gets on the phone, very nice police sergeant, and says, well, if you want to get your property back, here are the forms you fill out. You've got to sign an affidavit, get it notarized, send it in, and we'll think about it. And in fact, the forms themselves say that if you fill out all the forms and submit them properly, it'll get reviewed by a variety of different St. Louis committees, and you will be informed of our decision, but it may take quite a while. I said, no effing way in hell. I got a court order right here that says I get it right now. So they send me away, and I call up the guy again, and I say, well, who's going to authorize this? They said, well, legal. Who's legal? Well, I'll give you the number. So I call up that number, and it's the city councilor's office for the city of St. Louis. Well, in this last legislative session, the city police have been taken back by the state government, and now the attorney general of the state is the legal counsel for the police department and not the city councilor's office. So I call up the city councilor and I say, they say that you have to authorize the return of the gun. And they say, well, no, we don't. We don't represent the city police anymore. I said, I know that. You know that. They don't know that. Would you call them up and tell them that you don't have anything to say in it? Well, no, we won't do that. Call the attorney general's office. So I called the attorney general's office back up and talked to her about it. And they said, oh, we'll make sure. So then I get a nice, happy call from another police officer saying, come on down, pick it up. And they were actually very nice about it eventually.
Eventually.
They still tried to get the runaround even after 1,847 days.
Isn't that something? Good thing you're persistent, Mark.
Well, that's what I've been saying. Even if the only thing they took from you wrongly was a toothpick, when the government overreaches, when the government tries to screw you intentionally, all I did was stand out on my front porch with my wife and defend our house and our lives against 350 to 500 Antifa mobsters that were screaming death and arson and rape and even wanted to kill our dog and burn down my office building. When the president of the United States, the governor of the state of Missouri, the attorney general from the state of Missouri, and 12 sitting United States congressmen all said that I did absolutely nothing wrong and should be lauded for what I did, it was pretty hard for me to believe that I did something wrong. But the George Soros funded prosecutor thought differently and had to make some political hay out of it. So they charged us with 2 felonies each, would have cost us 4 years in the slammer, our law licenses, our practice, everything would have ruined us. But of course, is always their goal to ruin you and to break you. But thank God, we had a little bit of acumen ourselves. We had the governor of Missouri behind us, so we get pardoned, right? And I think that ends that, right? We get pardoned. The pardon from the governor says that it eliminates any and all consequences or disadvantages attendant to the events for which we were charged. And I figured losing my property was one of those disadvantages. And so I filed a writ of replugging saying, give me my guns back. Well, the judge hears the argument on that, takes 6 or 7 months for a ruling, rules against us on that. So I take it up to the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals says, well, the governor's pardon obliterated your conviction, but not your guilt, whatever the heck that means. And therefore, you don't get your guns back for whatever the heck that means. So we decide that we would then go one step further and get expunged. Under the expungement law in Missouri, if you get your record expunged, it is, quote, as if the underlying events never occurred. And so as soon as we get expunged, and by the way, the average expungement is a rubber stamp operation, right? You stand up there, you meet the qualifications, the judge stamps a form. In our case, nope, 4 hours of testimony by people that were allegedly harmed by us that day. And then the judge takes over 70 days to issue a ruling, but he does expunge us. So then I file a new writ of replugging saying, according to the law in Missouri, I've never been charged with anything. I've never been arrested. I've never been convicted of anything. So why the heck do you have my guns? So then the city, instead of coughing up my guns, tries to have my expungement reversed and appeals the judge's rule of expungement. So we got to go through the Court of Appeals a second time, months and months and months. And then on July 1st of this year, the Court of Appeals rules that the expungement is affirmed. And so then I set the motion to have my guns back, set a hearing last Thursday. And thank God, the legislature has returned the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department to the control of the state government. The governor signed it. And so the Attorney General's office agreed to consent to the return of their rifle. The problem is that little Brico pistol is, for whatever reason, in possession of the sheriff of St. Louis, which is still owned by the city of St. Louis. And they told the judge that the guy that showed up from the city councilor's office said that he didn't have authority one way or the other, but it'd probably go away this week and we get that back too. I'm holding my breath.
So you're telling me that the state is now running the police department in St. Louis?
Yeah, and can't give you the exact dates, but a long time ago in the 1870s, St. Louis was so corrupt that the state government took over the St. Louis Police Department. It stayed like that until a few years ago, where St. Louis got control of its own police department again. Once again, so corrupt that the state legislature passed new legislation to pull back control of the state government and put it under their legal representation is now the Attorney General of the state of Missouri. By the way, that's a guy named Andrew Bailey, who's a great Attorney General. So yeah, I live in a city. Let me just say this for your audience there, Brandon. The late Bernie Carrick and I had a conversation one night about how dangerous St. Louis is. And he was commissioner of the police from New York City during 9/11. And a lot of people think New York City might be kind of a dangerous place. 8,400,000 people live in New York City, and they'd had about 300 murders that year. 275,000 people live in the city of St. Louis. And at that point, we'd had 256 murders, like 20 times the murder rate of New York City. And that's how dangerous it is to live in the city of St. Louis. And that's a combination of not having had a Republican administration since 1949. Our police department is overworked and understaffed. And during the last mayoral administration, defunded and demoralized to where they can't possibly do their job. And, instead of doing something to clean up the city, the administration, there was a meeting between the St. Louis mayor and the Kansas City mayor in St. Louis while she was Mayor Tashara Jones. And during the press conference outdoors, gunfire shows up in the background, bang, 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 bang. And Tashara Jones, the then mayor, said, my son and I get used to going to bed to the symphony of gunfire. And they think that's a world that people want to live in. I mean, it's just outrageous. But, on the other hand, evil, guys like my wife and I that do nothing more than defend their own property, by God, we have to go to jail.
Wow. So the St. Louis Police Department and the government of St. Louis is so corrupt, it's been handed over to the Attorney General of the state. He's the one really in charge of the police department in St. Louis.
Well, there's a police commission that's now, I guess, appointed by the governor that allegedly runs the police department. The Attorney General's office is counsel for the police department. I made the mistake of saying this to the judge on Thursday. I said exactly what you said, that the AG's office now runs the police department. The assistant AG there that day said, "Oh, no, we don't run it. We're counsel for it." Okay,
but it's being run by who? Who's running it day to day?
There's a police commission set up by the ordinance or the state statute, which I guess is done by appointed by the governor or some.
So the governor's had to set up a commission. The governor has had to set up a commission that actually is the one running and overseeing the police department, because the local government in St. Louis is so corrupt they can't be trusted to run their own police department.
Absolutely. This is where I'm proud to call myself home. Wow. That's just amazing. I mean, I in all seriousness, Brandon, we hear gunfire all the time. We hear everything from pistols and semi-automatic rifles to fully automatic gunfire. And we'll be in the middle of the night, and the guns will start going off, and Patty and I'll sit up, and how many did you count, right? How many did I count? You can hear, and And oftentimes, well, you'll hear running gun battles, right? Different caliber, different sound weapons. And the other day, I mean, this is terrible. There was a gun battle going on down Kings Highway Boulevard, which runs past our house. And you hear two different kinds of guns going off. Brr, bang, bang, brr, bang, bang. And then a few seconds later, a single gunshot, boom, meaning that they had caught up with whomever they were chasing and did the coup de grace. And, we sit around, we listen. Are we going to hear a police car show up? Are we going to hear an ambulance? Are we going to hear any kind of formal response? Nah, never happens.
So the police they're not, the police have lost control.
Yeah, it's totally understaffed. We were, and I don't know the numbers now because I've not been paying attention to it since the end of my Senate race. But at that point, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, with a total force of hopefully 1,000, was down 200 officers. So we're 20% down in force and in ever increasing violence. And we have a new mayor now. I'm hoping that she will take some control of that. I will tell you this story just to show you how bad it was under the last administration. The son of a client of mine was murdered in cold blood. He and another young man were having
Who was?
The son of a client of mine, teenage guy, was having, he and another young man were having a verbal dispute about a common girlfriend. Arguments over. Other guy goes to the trunk of his car, gets out a pistol, comes out and shoots my client's son in the back of the head, kills him on videotape. They chase him down to Texas, arrest him, drag him back to St. Louis. The city council, the city prosecutor fails to show up for any hearing. The defense lawyers say, give us your production, give us your discovery. They don't do it. They get an order from the court saying, thou must produce the discovery to the defendant. They don't do it. The judge writes an order to show cause why the prosecutor's office should not be held in contempt of court for failing to obey his orders. He has that order hand-delivered by his bailiff to the circuit attorney's office, so they can't claim they didn't get it. They don't show up to that hearing. And so the judge then says, it's not my job to prosecute these crimes. My job is to be the judge. But if the circuit attorney's office chooses to not prosecute this case, I have no choice but to return this guy, this animal, back out on the streets. Then the circuit attorney, the same one that charged us, gets on a press conference and says, no harm, no foul, because we still have him in custody, when in fact he'd been released the Wednesday before.
Oh, wow.
That's what St. Louis is like. Cold-blooded murderer, kills somebody on video, and gets to walk because a prosecutor refuses to prosecute crime.
What, other than standing up, going all the way to get your guns back, instead of, the standard, you're not going to be bullied, pushed around. What other advice, with that story and all that else that's going on, what other advice do you have for the audience tonight?
Well, my general advice is always the same. Each and every one of us owes a personal duty to ourselves and the nation to stand up for our rights and our liberty. You can't count on anybody else. You sure as heck can't count on the government. What you need to do is count on yourself, your friends, your neighbors. Just make sure that everybody knows that they have rights. These are rights given to us by God as human beings made in the image of the Lord. And that which God gives us, no government can take away. And every time, is what I was saying earlier, if they only wrongfully take a toothpick from you, you have to fight it to the end, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And what the left always wants is a frightened, impoverished public, because frightened and impoverished people want to ask somebody else for help. And that somebody else is typically the government. But the government doesn't give you anything. They trade you your freedom for a false sense of security.
Wow.
What each and every one of us needs to do is just say, we're going to take control of our own lives. We're going to stand up for our own freedoms, and we will fight and never back down anytime the government wants to infringe on those rights.
Wow. Well, I want to play the last 5 minutes of your speech from the Ozarks, Mark, because you got a thunderous standing ovation. So I think our audience will appreciate hearing that. But I wanted to bring you on tonight. Can
I put a plug in before we do that?
Yeah, please.
My new full-time job is I'm representing hundreds of January 6th political prisoners in compensation claims. And all these guys, what the world has seen from the liberal media about January 6th, the so-called insurrection, which we call a Fedsurrection because it was really part of this ongoing coup that's now getting revealed against President Trump. But I mean, the vast majority of these people were moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas that walked through doors being held open for them by Capitol Police, fist bumping the cops on the way in, singing the national anthem, chanting USA, USA. They go home, then days or weeks or even years later, the FBI shows up on their front lawn with Bearcats and tanks and battering rams, 35. One guy who the 4-year-old kid opens the door, he's got 30 laser dots on his chest from machine guns with FBI guys on misdemeanor trespass charges. Misdemeanor trespass. These people would go to federal prison on misdemeanor trespass, something which, if you could get the city of St. Louis to prosecute a trespass person, they get a ticket in the mail and a $75 fine. And this is just, it's horrible. These people's lives have been destroyed. Their careers have been destroyed. Their reputations have been destroyed. They can't get employment because whenever they get a job, a couple of days later, their employer Googles their name and fires them for being a seditionist. And so we're trying to get some justice for these folks, get them some compensation for the way the last administration abused them, because the last administration wanted to send out a message that if you stand up against the government, we will crush you, we will destroy you, we will ruin you, and we'll make you wish you had never been born. And that was the message they wanted to send.
And what do you think you'll get? I mean, I believe these families absolutely deserve compensation. What do you think you'll end up with?
Well, I'm hoping that we can convince the government to set aside a large fund for compensation similar to what was done for the 9/11 victims. And some of these people, I mean, I've got people who were relatively prominent people that are now living in vans or living in their parents' basements. I mean, people that have absolutely no way to make a living because no one will hire them because of the taint that's been placed upon them. And they are really, really hurting. And we're trying to get the attention of the president on this. We've been up to D.C. twice to meet with the Justice Department on this as recently as 2.5 weeks ago. And there are 1,583 people that were arrested. There may be a person here or there that overreacted in self-defense. In the real world, until about 2:20 that afternoon, it was an absolutely peaceful protest. And then at about 2:20 in the afternoon, somebody put out the word to the police that they needed to attack, and they started launching the flashbang grenades and the rubber bullets and the tear gas, and that provoked people, and some people got overly provoked. Like I said earlier, the vast majority of these people were just passing into the Capitol building or standing outside. I've got one guy whose life was destroyed because what he got charged with was what he calls stepping on the government grass. There were no bicycle barricades or anything where he was, but he got charged and convicted of stepping into a restricted area, and his life has been destroyed.
That's absolutely horrific, of course. And yet, there are self-described conservatives, people that I know are conservative, not just self-described conservatives. They are conservative. They're for small government, limited government. They're for the Constitution. And yet, some of them that we've talked to believe that on January 6th, 2 or 3 police officers were killed.
You hear it all the time. It's complete nonsense, complete lies. I mean, there were 2 people killed that day. There was Roseanne Boylan and there was Ashley Babbitt. They were both Trump supporters, and Ashley Babbitt was shot, 14-year Air Force veteran, unarmed, shot by a Capitol policeman with a totally unprovoked attack on her. Roseanne Boylan beaten to death in the Senate tunnel by a police officer who continued to strike her even after she was dead. No one hears about that. But what you hear in the national press and the mainstream media is that 5 police officers were brutally murdered that day. Absolutely complete lie, and I hear it repeated on the mainstream media even to this day.
Yeah, again, these are people that are conservatives. They believe this to be true. And when you correct them, they're like, what?
Yeah.
They're shocked to find out the truth, and then they go research it. I mean, the police officer that died days later and had nothing to do with January 6th, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem is that we have to win the information battle before we can win anything else, because I'll bet there's still half of the Republicans in the United States Congress that think that there was an insurrection on January 6th. Well, what a poorly planned insurrection when a bunch of post-middle-aged people waving American flags and wearing Trump hats show up at the Capitol building with no plan, no organization, and no weapons. You know, a 5-year-old could come up with a better insurrection than that. But the media has sold this concept that it was a murderous mob organized by the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and nothing could be further from the truth. And yet, you know, when you have one side of the story being told incessantly and people not wanting to take the time or the effort to learn the truth, it's a very tough battle to win.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, that's why we're so glad that you're out here fighting for them. Do you have any cases going to court? Have you sued? How does this work?
What we're doing is we're preserving everybody's right. The way you have to do it under the Federal Tort Claims Act is you have to do what's called exhausting your administrative remedies. You have to file a form putting the agencies on notice that you have a claim against them. They get 6 months to decide whether or not to pay the claim. If not, then they give you what's called a right to sue letter, and you get 6 months to file the lawsuit. Our hope is that we can set up a non-judicial settlement commission so that we, you know, although we've preserved everybody's right to do it, we will not have to file those lawsuits because, amongst other things, you're required to file that action in federal court in front of a federal judge with no jury. And a lot of these guys have already been in front of a federal judge with no jury, and they've seen how well that works out. And, you know, we had people, you know, people that did years in prison, 4 years in prison for doing essentially nothing, for being in the wrong place at the wrong time and being the scapegoats. We have people that have done hundreds of days in solitary confinement under completely inhuman conditions that you would never subject your dog to, and yet they've just been. And to this day, well, on January 20th, when the president signed the pardon, the next day all their local newspapers say convicted terrorist fill in the blank pardoned by President Trump. And it has destroyed their lives. And yet, you know, you'd have to go to every congressman, every Republican, every conservative pundit and say, "Look, spend an hour with me, and I'll show you the truth." You know, and then in the backdrop of an endless stream of the lies from the left being poured out through every news media, it makes telling the truth very difficult. But, you know, Tulsi Gabbard came out with some truth a couple of Saturdays ago, and the mainstream media is just absolutely ignoring that, too.
Yeah, they are. Mark, you have a website where you're putting all this up, or an X account, or what?
Well, my X feed is McCloskey USA. My website is McCloskeylaw.com. And I will go ahead and do this on your program. I do it every time. I'll give you my personal cell phone number. It's 314-580-3185. That's 314-580-3185. Excuse me. The more people we have on board, the more you know, strength we have in numbers against the resistance that's out there. I know President Trump is sincere about compensating the J6ers. Patty and I were at CPAC this spring. We were in the front row when President Trump gave his 90-minute address, when we were 10 feet from the president when he's giving his speech. And when he talked about taking care of the J6 political hostages, he got the most sustained and enthusiastic standing ovation of the night. And you could see it on his face that it made an impression. And I know he's sincere about it. It's just, you know, A, you got to get the funding. B, you've got to overcome the negatives of the people that are believing the lies and make them understand the truth.
Absolutely. And there needs to be that accountability so that the government realizes there's consequences, right? Are you familiar with Victoria White?
Only by name.
You know, have you seen the video of her getting a beat down?
Yes.
Do you know that she's a longtime listener of my radio show? Victoria's been emailing me for years. And then, long before J6, I'm talking years. She's been a regular listener of my network and radio show every day on VCY America, and she's out of Rochester, Minnesota. And when that happened to her, I thought, wait a minute, I know a Victoria White. Is this the same Victoria White? And sure enough, it is. She's called into the show. She's talked about it as a caller. She's emailed us information. But you ought to see the video of her getting a massive she's fortunate to be alive. She got a massive beat down in that tunnel.
We represent a guy named Duke Wilson. He's a 70-year-old man. He was severely beaten by the Capitol Police, and then given 30 months in prison in Yazoo City, a very tough, very bad prison. 70-year-old guy that was there with his son that day, and they just beat the living you know what out of him. And then his thanks for being severely beaten for doing nothing but being there 30 months in a really, really bad prison in Yazoo City. You know, it's unbelievable. I mean, the stories, I could go on for hours and hours and hours, but I mean, there's so many examples of people who were beaten, who were tortured, who were denied their medication, cancer victims who were denied their medication, people that, were placed in solitary for hundreds of days and they talk about 23 in, 1 hour out in solitary confinement. Well, 1 hour out meant they were put in a cell that had a window so you could see the sky. I mean, really locked down 24 hours a day, horrible food, horrible conditions, like a 5x8 concrete block cell with no windows, month after month after month for doing essentially nothing. For most of these people, did not know that whatever they were doing was allegedly illegal because they walked on ground that didn't have any signs, didn't have any barriers. They walked through doors being opened for them by Capitol Police on both sides, on both the west side where some of this stuff got pretty rough, and on the east side where there's absolutely nothing going on. But it was designed. Well, I'll say this: the setup for January 6th, set up by the Biden administration, was threefold. One, they wanted to send a general message to the entire population that you cannot stand up against the left or you'll be persecuted and destroyed. The second is they wanted to collect all the most ardent Trump supporters into one place on January 6th to stop the steal and then entrap them into this event at the Capitol to crush those people that were the most loyal supporters of the president. But the primary thing they wanted to do, in my opinion, was to create a crisis. They wanted to create a Kent State type situation where there'd be some bodies on the ground that they could film and claim to be the result of right-wing extremism and round us all up. Because then they could claim that Donald Trump was engaged in a insurrection and therefore was ineligible to run for president again under the 14th Amendment. And they've kept that up from that day till today. And that's what the real scam was, what the real conspiracy was to set up a situation where they could claim, and Donald Trump was in charge of it. I cannot tell you how many of my clients have said that they were offered lenient or no sentences if they would just say that Donald Trump planned it and set them up for it.
Do you really think that the individuals carrying out these violent acts that day were really Capitol Police? Were they actual members of the Capitol Police, or were they people who were brought in that were posing as Capitol Police?
Whether people posing as Capitol Police or people posing as Trump supporters, the number of agents provocateur in the crowd has still not been revealed by the FBI. But you've obviously got people like Ray Epps that were egging people on. We've got people that would come in dressed as Trump supporters and then come out in police uniforms. I mean, there's volumes of evidence. One of the guys that we represent was there. His dad was running for Congress in Arizona. A guy named Jeff Sink was running for Congress. His son Ryan was there essentially filming a campaign commercial for his dad. But he made the mistake of filming some of the agents provocateur, right? And so they arrest him. They jail him. They charge him with a whole pack of felonies. They sell his indictment to the grand jury on the statement that he was a leader of the insurrection and personally responsible for the death of Capitol Officer Brian Sisnick, who, as you mentioned earlier, died days later of natural causes. And he goes to trial. On the first day of trial, the government admits that they have no evidence that he led anything, that he had no evidence of anything to do with Brian Sisnick's death. And more than that, he never even went in the Capitol building. And so his defense lawyers moved to dismiss. And the judge essentially says, you can put on your defense if you want to, but you're guilty. Goes to a jury trial, 20 minutes of jury selection, 20 minutes of jury deliberation, guilty on all counts, including that BS 1512 charge that the Supreme Court has subsequently thrown out. And then so he gets convicted. Now he's on appeal. He says, "May I have my video cameras and my memory cards back, please?" Oops, we've lost them. I mean, that was what the government was in those days. We were so close to losing everything. We were so close to having this, what we know as this democratic republic, taken away from us on that day. And it's thank God that it turned out the way it did. You know, when they talk about an insurrection, there were 1 million people or more there that day. There were thousands of people at the Capitol building supporting President Trump. Not a single federal officer was killed. No guns were used. They had to, you know what, they convicted lots and lots of people on assault on a federal officer with a dangerous or deadly weapon. Those dangerous and deadly weapons included things like putting your hand up to block a baton blow. And if the baton hits your hand, that was using a dangerous and deadly weapon against a federal officer. If you tossed an empty water bottle and it happened to go in the direction of a policeman, even without hitting them or being intended to be thrown at them, that was assault on a police officer with a dangerous or deadly weapon. These are years in prison charges, and it's all complete nonsense. But we were so close to losing our republic that day, and thank God it turned out the way it did.
Indeed.
And hopefully we will get some compensation for the people that were the victims of this conspiracy.
And Mark, you're telling me now you don't have proof that the guys doing the beatdown in the tunnels were actually Capitol police officers. You don't know who they are? Is that what you're saying?
We know who some of them are. And for example, but there were lots of people in the crowd breaking windows and encouraging people to commit crimes. And once again, I always use this phrase, I can't tell you how many, because there's so many people out there with the same story. They were there telling people, don't do anything violent. This isn't who we are. We don't break things. We don't steal things. We don't hit people. We're here to peacefully protest. And then, one of the guys I represent is a guy named Derek Vargo. At 2:16 that afternoon, he's climbing up the steps to display. He's got a big Trump flag that he wants to hang over the balcony of the stairs on the west side of the Capitol building. Very clearly, you can see a Capitol police officer first hit him with his baton and then push him off the wall. And Derek fell about 30 feet down, broke his legs, and injured his back. He had to be hauled away by stretcher and ambulance, and still is suffering the consequences of that. But there you've got a Capitol police officer intentionally pushing a guy off a wall after a 30-foot drop. And do these people go to jail? They get charged with anything? No. Did the cop that shot Ashley Babbitt, did he go to jail? Did he get prosecuted? No. But the investigation into his actions took about 12 seconds, and then he was cleared of all charges because, after all, he was defending the Capitol against this insurrection.
The reason I keep pressing on the issue of, do we know who these guys are? Like the guy that just pushed that guy off you're telling me about. Do we actually know who they are? Can we verify their actual Capitol Police? The reason I keep pushing on that is because the Capitol Police that I've dealt with over the years, going there as a tourist, as a reporter, many of them are just the nicest, most cordial, friendly. My wife and I were in the Capitol in the mid-90s. We struck up a conversation with one of the Capitol Police. He didn't know us. He was in the Rotunda area. And we were just having a good conversation with him. And he said, "Would you guys like to go onto the floor of the House?" We're like, "Sure." He's like, "Come on, let's go." He took us right onto the floor of the House. We stood behind the podium where the president gives the State of the Union address. We have run into so many of them that are they bend over backwards for the tourists. They seem to really love their job, love interacting with the public that comes from all over the world and all over America. And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't seem like the caliber of people that would then turn around and beat down the American people. That's why I'm really questioning whether a lot of those people were actually really Capitol Police, or were they special feds that were brought in to do that?
You know, and I will agree with you on that. The typical Capitol policeman goes out of his way to be nice, and did on that day that they held the doors for people. You know, the funny thing is there weren't enough porta potties around in D.C. that day, and a lot of people went into the Capitol to try to find a place to use a restroom. And the cops, you know, the Capitol Police had the doors open for them, and they say, "Is there any place here I can go use a restroom?" And the cops would say, "Yeah, go up there, take a right, then take another left." And they were very nice. And then all of a sudden, people showed up in riot gear. And like I say, at about 2:20 in the afternoon, somebody gave an order to do an assault on the protesters. And who gave that order, you know, we don't yet know, but I'm pretty sure we're going to find a paper trail. And you know, the other thing is, like the story I was telling earlier about people, you know, pulling kids out of their houses at 6 o'clock in the morning at machine gun point. You know, I can see this scenario happening. I take the deposition of that a local FBI officer and said, what kind of a heartless SOB would point a machine gun at a 4-year-old child when the only thing you're complaining about is trespass, or anything for that matter? And he's going to say, it wasn't my choice. I was just following orders. My boss instructed me to do it. And then you take the boss's deposition and you say, well, why would you ever command your field agents to go out there and break down people's doors and point machine guns at their wives and their children and their parents when all they're accused of doing is trespassing? He said, well, it wasn't my idea, it was my boss. And I'll bet that eventually goes up to Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland and all the way up to whatever person was allegedly acting as president that day. But I know that command came out. And another command came out at some point to treat the J6 defendants more harshly in the manner of their arrests, in the manner of their prosecution, and in the manner of their punishment than any other defendants in the history of the United States. No one goes to federal prison on misdemeanors. No one has the FBI kick down their doors at 6 o'clock in the morning, or have 25 or 35 FBI officers in riot gear show up at your house for misdemeanors, except January 6 defendants. And yet that was the almost uniform method of arresting people. And it was obviously an entirely different thing. And I agree with you, Brandon. I think the average Capitol policeman is a very good, well-intentioned person who really puts the will of the American people first. And I do believe there were some special forces in there that were specifically there as agents provocateur to try to incite violence. And the little bit of violence they did incite got dramatically portrayed by the press. And I know a lot of the guys I've talked to have said, when I got home that day and watched the newscast, I said, that can't possibly be the same place I was today, because we didn't see any of that.
Wow. Mark, keep it up. Hey, any updates you have on this as you fight for the J6ers, let me know. We'd love to get you back. I didn't realize you were doing this. Keep us updated, because we'd love to have you come back on and give updates along the way.
I sure will. I sure appreciate the opportunity to share it.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. And folks, follow him on X. In the meantime, folks, here's just a little sample of Mark's keynote address at our national conference just a couple of years ago. Standing ovation. By the way, gives you a little idea of what our national conference is like. And if you want to come to the 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend, we're holding it in Memphis this year, right outside of Memphis, I should say. Outside of Memphis, in beautiful, safe Collierville, Tennessee, where we live. And all the hotels are on our website. Everything's there. Come join us. Only 350 seats in this beautiful theater owned by our town. And we've cut the cost of the tickets way down because we're saving money by moving it here. So come join us. We have full details at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. But if you'd like to see what a Worldview Weekend National Conference is like, listen to this just a few minutes of the closing speech from a couple years ago by Mark McCloskey. Watch this.
Everything that you see going on in the country today, from your local school boards and critical race theory. And by the way, I was the first lawyer in the country to file a lawsuit against the school for critical race theory. But all this, everything from the BS nonsense of transgenderism. By the way, think about how the media controls the dialogue. And somebody was saying, I guess General Flynn was saying, don't let them control your verbiage. Don't let them control the narrative. But 3 or 4 years ago, would anybody believe that there was actually a conversation in this country about whether or not boys with their boy parts ought to be able to shower with, go to the bathroom with, and compete with girls. I mean, this is just, and yet now, in October of 2022, if you say something like that, you get banned from Facebook and you're called a transphobe. Every day there is a new insult, a new threat. And no matter what you do these days, you're called a racist, right? We have to get past this. We have to get to the point where we're not afraid to say the truth. We're not afraid to say what's really going on for fear of having some newspaper article or some reporter give you a label which they created specifically for the purposes of controlling us. One of the things that led us down this rabbit hole, one of the things that caused us to lose our freedoms is this concept of tolerance. We have to be tolerant of other people's life choices. We have to be tolerant of their positions. We have to respect their communities of interest. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can't be tolerant of evil. You can't be tolerant of sin. You can't be tolerant of immorality. There are real truths. This concept of social and moral relativism is what has caused the decay of this country. My wife always says that we might win the political battle, and we may well do that, but the hardest thing to win is going to be to restore the morality and the common purpose to the American people. When we were kids, we were all pulling in the same direction. You didn't need to have laws because we knew you wouldn't break into a Nike store and steal shoes. You knew you weren't going to club people to death on the subway because we all had a common shared Christian morality, and we knew it was right and wrong, and you didn't have to have the government tell us it. The problem is when you remove religion, when you remove morality from the common discourse, then everything is only right or wrong if the government tells you. Why does the government want to separate kids from their parents? Because communists only believe in one parent, and that's the government. Why do they want to take religion out of school and out of government? Because to your communists, there's only one religion, and that's communism, right? And that's what all of this is about. So, ladies and gentlemen, as campy as it is, I always recite the Declaration of Independence, because this is the core of what our country is all about. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, securing their just powers from the consent of the governed, and that's us. And the time has come to pull back that consent of the government, to remind the people in D.C. this is our country, that it belongs to us, does not belong to them, that we're going to take it back. Each and every one of us needs to take a personal stand for freedom, stand up and say, we will be a free people, we will not be sheep, we will not consent, we will resist all unconstitutional mandates. We will stand up for the freedom of this republic, the freedom of our fellow man, and we will not sit back and be sheep. We will be a free people, proud of our heritage, proud of our religion, proud of our republic, proud of our forebears, proud to kneel when we pray and stand for the American flag. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. And by the way, she's a tough guy. I'm standing up here, like I said, I can't tell you how, if you haven't seen it from my own eyes, I'm standing 50 feet from the nearest guy threatening our lives. Patty's 3 feet from him. There's hundreds of them, and they're all screaming the foulest stuff you can possibly imagine to her. And she stood there, and you see that look in her eye, boy. You're going to behave when you see that look. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
All right, that's our broadcast for tonight, folks. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. As always, guys, thank you for your support. It's so vital we have your support. WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. Please, we need your support. A lot of folks get busy in the summer and they forget about us. Please don't forget about us. There's so much we need to be pushing out to you, helping you be vigilant on. And if you appreciate what we're doing, we need that support. Don't forget our national conference coming up Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, here in beautiful Collierville, Tennessee, in the Mid-South. all the details. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. All right? Don't forget about the Thursday night banquet. That's optional. All that is there, along with the hotels and everything at worldviewstore.com. While you're there, go ahead and order some business cards. Man alive, we have sent out so many thousands of these. Thank you, folks. Free business cards. Order them, pass them out to your friends. Tell them about Worldview Tube. May God save America. Take care. Trying to get our Comrex to hook in with VCY America, but we're here and on the phone for now, but we'll get it reconnected, and we're here on television, of course. We'll get it reconnected, and it'll all work out. It's Monday. It's a Monday, folks. Hope you had a great weekend. Hey, I had a great time last night teaching on Revelation chapter 19, the marriage supper of the Lamb. I want to talk about that a little bit today. Now, if you heard it last night, I'm not going to do the whole lesson, but I want to go to a particular spot in the lesson because I just found out some very interesting things in my research Saturday and Sunday as I was preparing for last night's lesson time together. It was lesson 45, by the way. 45 one-hour lessons in the book of Revelation. And here we are in Revelation chapter 19. And I think we're connected with VCY, aren't we, Logan? So I can hang up this phone, right, Dalton? Yes, he says yes. Thank you, Dalton, for your patience and everybody else. So 45 one-hour lessons on the book of Revelation. And I want to share with you what I learned. I think you'll find fascinating. Like I said, even if you heard it last night, you can hear it again because this is something you should really memorize. And I think it's going to really encourage you. My wife was encouraged by it last night as she listened. She said it just was so encouraging because I was spending a lot of time talking about heaven because the marriage supper of the Lamb, I think, takes place in heaven. But there was a great chorus in heaven rejoicing. And I'll tell you why they were rejoicing. But first, I want to go back to Friday's program real quick. We had a caller that called in who wanted to be anonymous. And what bothered me after I got off the air was not how I handled the call, to be honest with you. What bothered me is that I didn't have the time to explain to you why I handled the call the way I did. And that bothered me because I'm like, I think I may have left the audience, the listeners, our friends, listening friends and viewing friends, maybe a little confused as to why I responded as I did. Well, first of all, this is someone called in anonymously. And this is someone who has also left a handful of voicemails for us in the last few months that are very not only aggressive, but accusatory and attacking our ministry. And I recognized his voice, which is maybe why he didn't want to use his name, but calling us anti-Semitic. We have the voicemails still. We save all this. We save all these kind of things for those that think they're going to do this. It becomes a permanent record. Accusing us of being anti-Semitic. Really, guys? I'm one of the most staunchly known Christian Zionists in the world, right? One of the most strong Christian Gentile Zionists in the world. A voicemail attacking us, calling us not only anti-Semitic because we were simply, I guess, asking Israel to handle Iran on their own. Let's not get America dragged into that. But went on to make other accusations. And now the individual wants to call in and disrupt the program. Now, I went back and I listened to the call. And what I want to explain to you here, folks, is spiritual warfare. That's why I'm bringing this up. That was a spiritual attack, and that was spiritual warfare, which is why you may have noticed me go into a different gear, right? I wear all kinds of hats, right? You watch my Worldview report. I am basically doing your typical old-fashioned Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, Frank Reynolds kind of broadcast. I'm listing the guys from back in my day, of course. And that's just my straight news guy. Now I have a commentary at the end of the program, but that's just my straight news program. Then I have Brandon House Live. And it depends on what's going on. Brandon House Live may just be me being a talk show host.